welcome to the very first panel, I believe, that is specifically talking about disability and football at the World Football Summit. And let me start by saying thank you to the World Football Summit for accepting our suggestion, and in the person of Mariano Otamendi, to have this conversation here today. Before we get into it, we'd like to say that this panel is also held in tribute to a good friend that we lost in our community this year, Eli Wolf. Eli was a very generous person, and he was one of the very first people to believe in the work of Integrated Dreams, together with Matt, that I see here in the room, a few years ago, and a couple of other people. So for us, he was a friend, a mentor, a colleague that we learned a lot from. And on top of that, he seemed like he knew somehow that he had limited time on the planet. So although he was in his mid-40s, his accomplishments could have lasted for a few lifetimes. So for those of you who don't know who Eli was, just very briefly tell you that he was a Paralympic soccer player, a professor of sports management at the University of Connecticut. He co-founded and directed the Power of Sport Lab. He helped establish the International Day of Sport for Peace and Development. He ensured sport was included at the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. He established the SP Award in the US, which stands for Excellence in Sports Performance yearly for best female and male athletes with a disability. He was part of a working group that was set up by FIFA to create pathways to develop disabled football. And he was also a poet. We have one of his poems, Shine, on the screen. So we wanted to, in honor of his legacy, continue his work, and this is the best way we know how to do it, which is having this conversation right here on one of the main stages at the World Football Summit. So getting into the conversation, I would like to welcome our four panelists, and thank you for coming all the way to Seville. Thank you to Hala Usta, who's the Senior Manager for Diversity and Accessibility at FIFA, Ashley Reed, the CEO of Scottish Prayer Football, and congrats again for the award, for the Football Without Limits award you received yesterday evening. Giovanni Sacripanti is the head of the Paralympic and Experimental Department at the Italian Football Association. And Stuart, I have to read your title because it's
you should see my business card, it's that size.
You're Senior Director, Technical and Grassroots at the Extended National Teams Department of US Soccer. I think I got that right.
Congrats.
So for this panel, we wanted to showcase a little bit, especially for those who don't know, what national federations, and we have 3 of them here, are doing in the field of disabled football, but also in the disability inclusion more broadly. And I would ask, maybe we can start with you, Giovanni, if you could share a little bit with the group, what is the Italian Federation doing to develop disabled football, and if you want to talk about both internally at the Federation and for the playing aspects. And then, Stuart, I would ask you to do the same.
Okay, thank you, Joanna, and thank you, World Football Summit, for the invitation. Well, of course, Italian Federation is doing many things, for example, for non-players in terms of disability, in terms of accessibility for the most important national team matches. For us, is a sort of prerequisite to host this kind of match in terms of new hiring. But as you was mentioning before, maybe the most interesting example in terms of what we do for people with disability is what we do for players. Indeed, we set up one of a specific division, experimental and Paralympic division, with inside the federation that organized a national tournament. It was one of the first examples in Europe of a federation doing that, but it's not that is important. More important is that today we have more than 440 teams the most part twinned with professional team and amateur team, for example, from Juventus, Inter, Milan, Naples, and so on. I should name all the teams because they deserve it. And today we have more than 2,400 players, girls and boys. And last season we played about 850 matches, including the finals in Coverciano. Coverciano is the heart of football in Italy, so also to have the finals there is important in terms of message, inclusion. Well, this is in a nutshell, in a few words, what we do. What I want to underline is that we really want to manage a division to play because for us, integration is fundamental. And our division is a way to invite everybody with disability to have the chance to play, to have fun, to whatever.
Thank you. Stuart, do you want to tell us what you're up to at US Soccer?
Yeah, and I'd like to say thanks again for recognising Eli and ensuring that his legacy, not only at US Soccer but worldwide, is recognised and carried forward. And and part of his work within the US has led that within the US Soccer Federation, that inclusion is one of our key ideals. And I think couldn't be demonstrated any stronger that if anyone caught the news that Messi didn't play against Atlanta United at the weekend, there was also a press release that US Soccer are building a national training centre. And key within that release, it was highly important that when this training centre was built, that it's a home for our disability national teams. So that goes to Eli for his work and that he's done within the federation. To give you an idea of how our federation is structured, I suppose first on the field, we have 27 national teams, 9 of which fall within the extended national teams department. Extended national teams meaning that it's an extension of the 11-side regular game, and 5 of those teams are for people with disabilities. Underneath that, we do have our membership. We have 15 other members who come from multiple disability categories, and we support those members at grassroots level through grants as well as equipment. So we make sure that there's a pathway for anyone to experience the game in the US, and we hope that pathway is robust enough that we can see someone go from a grassroots player to a club. We actually have university programs, we have a professional program, and also at the top level elite. So what we strive for at US Soccer on the field is that anyone can reach their level of potential, no matter their background or ability. I suppose off the field and underpinning that structure, we have a disability committee which is made up with our 15 disability members, and we also ensure that throughout our governance model that we also have, whether it be the referees committee, the finance committee, the technical committee, there's also representation throughout our entire structure for people with disabilities. So that's an important core value for us. And I suppose just finish, I know it's a short question, long answer, but we're also very proud that on our board, we have 3 individuals with disabilities also on US Soccer board. So everyone has a voice off the field, and hopefully they have an opportunity on the field as well.
Thank you, Stuart, and Giovanni. Ashley, I kind of separated you because Scottish Player Football is quite a unique governance model with the Scottish FA and also with women's. But if you could explain briefly what you do, of course, but why was the choice for this particular model? What's the reasoning behind it? And then we'll later go on to the good and the good aspects and the challenges that you have with it.
So firstly, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak today. So it's been really interesting to hear about how other nations approach sort of para-football and disability football. For example, hearing how Stuart's done it out in the States, and there's no, I don't think, one perfect model that's the best approach. It's just that nations have taken different approaches. So what we did in Scotland was in about 2018, we set up what would be called an affiliated national association. So it's actually a national association in disability football, para-football. And that became the governing body for all the disciplines of para-football, disability football, in Scotland. So there's 10 different, we call them game leaders, but 10 different disciplines of para-football, which are governed by Scottish para-football. And it gives us, I suppose, control of the governance of all these organisations, ensures there's the consistency across them in terms of procedures and protocols, but also the opportunity for all the different disciplines of para-football to come together and share ideas, learn from each other, and have a bit more of a common goal. I think everyone sitting in here that's had any connection to disability football knows that probably the biggest barrier is money and budget. It certainly is in Scotland. And what we found was you'd have, a Deaf Football Association and the Cerebral Palsy Association and the Scotland Amputee Association all competing for the same pots of money, the same funding pots, and actually it was going against all of us, that we were knocking each other out the running for funding. So what we've done is create a working group with, a representative from each of these disciplines. They all come together regularly and try to put together sort of funding bids, sponsorship bids, just a common goal. And that, I guess, is what Scottish Para-Football gave that sort of the umbrella body to do that. They gave them the one voice rather than all these different voices competing for the same resources and funds and things like that. So, yeah.
Thank you. We can already see from the three cases here that it's a different approach. And as you said, nothing is better than the other, just a different. And coming to you, Hala, at FIFA, you have an approach on disability inclusion that has different facets. So we're here more talking about from a federation perspective, from playing aspects view, but at FIFA you're focusing a lot on infrastructure and making sure that you ensure access and inclusion for your events. You've also set up a working group to start supporting steps for grassroots movements to create more opportunities, more playing opportunities for disabled people. Could you share a little bit of what you're doing, what is your work, and a little bit on each of these aspects that I mentioned?
Sure, thanks Joanna, and thanks again for the opportunity to speak and to speak to all of you as well. And thanks for covering in terms of it's a lot of wide-ranging activities in relation to disability in football for us. At FIFA, and especially within the Human Rights and Anti-Discrimination Department, it's really focused in terms of inclusivity is a key underlying principle against everything that we do and that we embed into, and the access elements in terms of spectatorship and coming along to the stadium and providing opportunities and making sure that the tournaments or events are safe, they're inclusive, they're barrier-free to anybody with disabilities or limited mobility coming along is implemented there. And one aspect of that is infrastructure, accessible infrastructure. So sometimes you'll hear us talking about, okay, the routes, the toilets, the changing places toilets, the seating, and all these different technical elements. But it goes beyond that in terms of also services that we provide. And the topic of accessibility has been evolving and growing over the years, so we've also had to catch up with that. And it's not a new topic for us. We've been working since, I think, 2010 to develop and evolving alongside new technologies and new things that are coming along. So in terms of services, we have audio descriptive commentary for partially sighted and blind people, which is detailed commentary in terms of what's happening on the pitch. It talks about the mood, it talks about the colours, the atmosphere of the game. But even the delivery of that has evolved over time. So going from handheld devices within the stadium and earphones to now you have app-based solutions. But then there's another thing to think about in terms of digital accessibility. So in terms of whoever is delivering whatever service, are you considering the contrast of the colours that are used in part of that app, or even related to that in terms of what's on the pitch, the kit on the pitch? Are you thinking about in terms of the screen readers and how they respond to that type of technology? So really trying to evolve as quick as we can. So recently what we've done is after every tournament or every few years, again, it's evolving. There's new standards, there's new regulations, there's different countries that we go to. We need to make sure that we're ahead of the game or on par with the things that are happening. So we recently developed the Accessibility Handbook requirements in consultation with different partners and with different disability groups themselves to make sure that we are meeting the needs, the most recent needs, to allow people to come to the game and enjoy the game. Now, that resource as a handbook has all these technical elements that sometimes can become overwhelming, but it's not just relevant to the stadiums that we go to, it's relevant to anywhere, and in terms of workplaces, in terms of including disabled people within employment and equal opportunities to work in places. So it's relevant to our office spaces, and that's in terms of a key element of governance. How do we include disabled people as part of the governance? And probably well known, my recent manager was Joyce Cook, which is a great advocate and comes from the Centre for Access to Football in Europe, and now I think is accessible. But she was a great advocate for in terms of making sure equal opportunities were considered. We have this department with human rights and anti-discrimination within FIFA, and it's something that's very close to us. It's, like I said, a principle and a commitment. And tailing on to that, as part of the next steps is probably the play element. And it's not to say that we are experts by any means in terms of disability football. The national associations are doing a lot of work in this space. And you mentioned the working group that was developed and the President's commitment towards para-football or disability football, depending on where we talk about it. But that's probably a focus for the next few years now, is to engage with the different international federations. I mean, the research that we've done already shows that there's a lot of disparity between the different national associations in terms of what's being delivered. Some have national performance and elite teams that already compete in these international competitions, and some are starting from absolutely nothing. There's a fear or a lack of awareness in terms of how to start on the topic of disability football. And even for us internally, we're still learning. So these partnerships are very important to us, to learn from these organizations, to learn from the disciplines themselves, and to raise our awareness, raise our education, but also to give them an equal opportunity to be included. And going back to that, inclusivity is the principle. That's something that we really want to focus on over the next period. And just in terms of tail end on that as well, is we're developing the human rights strategy across FIFA. And I think that this topic will be very important to be included as part of that conversation and to see how we develop it over the next few years.
Happy to hear that. Thanks for sharing. We know it's a complex landscape, but looking at the three of you in different realities across national federations, would like for you, each of you, to share a little bit. We'll then go to the positives, but more, what are the challenges that you're currently facing or in your everyday job? If you would have a magic wand, what would you remove from your daily obstacles? Maybe Ashley, I don't know if you want to start. You mentioned it briefly around resources.
Yeah, briefly, and it's you can sometimes I think. You look at the women's game 15 years ago, and what we liked in Scotland, anyway, we look at the accounts of the women's football in Scotland 15 years ago, and we say, right, they were at this point then. How can we get to where they are now, but just speed it up a little bit? But you can become a victim of your own success. So Scottish Para-Football, yes, first affiliated national association in the world in para-football. We have a governing body, an umbrella body to oversee the governance, ensure the consistency and policies, procedures, everything. Wonderful. Sounds great on paper. But to suddenly have that responsibility and accountability across all of these disciplines and their game leaders, as we call them, is suddenly putting a huge onus of work onto what generally is a pool of volunteers, because I think in most of our nations, the grassroots and disability football is generally delivered by volunteers. And it's a huge ask. These people are, working full-time in their jobs and then giving up their time to deliver disability football, and to suddenly say, right, you need to follow these policies and meet these governance guidelines. It's a lot to ask of people. And another challenge, I would say, besides the obvious funding one, which I could go on about all day, is data and data capture, I would say. So, I mean, we know there's 1 million people in Scotland that identify as having a disability. 100,000 of those are children. But there's been since 2012, no specific body of research conducted into the real barriers of entry to sport for disabled people. And that's not really good enough. We need to know what it is that's a hindrance to people entering sport and how we can remove those barriers. But also for us to actually collate how many people there are out there with disabilities and what those disabilities are. So what we've been trying to do in Scotland, that's just kicked off really in the last sort of month or two, is an audit of all the clubs. So Scotland is split up into 6 regions. Each is sort of managed by a regional manager in charge of all the clubs in that region. And what we did was we started with a pilot project where one regional manager said to all his clubs, right, how many people have you got in your club who are an amputee, autistic, cerebral palsy, in a power chair, deaf, visually impaired, all of the disciplines, there's 10 disciplines we have in Scotland. Get me that raw data, those numbers. And what I'm now getting back from these 6 regional managers, slowly, is a list of, quite a crude list, with all the clubs in Scotland and numbers down the side of how many people there are registered at clubs with these disabilities. So that ultimately what we want to do in Scotland is have a map where someone can say, do you know what, my daughter's in a wheelchair, wants to play football, okay, it's happening in this club. It's not happening in my club, but we can go over there, so that everybody can see clearly where there's opportunities to play football. Because I think the problem is, as well, just lack of awareness of the opportunities that are out there. So data capture is, it's been a big barrier, I think, to growing the game, but it's something we're working to overcome.
Good. We'll come back to the opportunities shortly. Giovanni, in your job, what are the major challenges that you have, either externally or internally as well, with the internal stakeholders?
I think Giovanni's biggest challenge is understanding 3 Scottish accents.
We tried to have someone on the panel who wasn't Scottish.
Well, of course, when you start a project like that, you have so many challenges, so many opportunities as well. If we have to distinguish in 2 big categories, we have challenges linked with cultural changement, because you have to work on the DNA of the organization, of the federation, of the club. It is a big transformation. And to do that, you have to explain why disability is important. What is disability? The knowledge of disability and the sensitivity of disability inside. To do that, for example, in Italy, it was very important to have the support of the top management, the president, general secretary, the senior manager, because absolutely it helps to spread out the disability strategy, the inclusion strategy in all the departments. Another big challenge is about resources, because the resources are not limited only by definition. But, of course, you can also have some public funds to support this kind of project. Europe, your countries, you can have support of UEFA, FIFA, absolutely. But anyway, you have to improve and increase your private funds as well, working with a partner already in the federation, or new partner with specifically linked with the project. For example, it is very important when you talk with a new partner, because the social cause is important, but it's not enough. For example, today it's very important in sport industry, and not only when we talk about Generation Z, millennial, they worth more than 2/3 in terms of consumer for so many categories. Well, for these 2 generations, for 80% of people belonging to this generation, companies working on inclusion are better than the others. And for 50% of people belonging to this generation, they want to work with companies or organizations with a real strategy on inclusion. So these two generations, very important, not only in sport industry, are really, really different from the previous generation, considering concepts like equity, integration, diversity, and so on. So you can use also that.
That's true. Stuart, you're in slightly different context in terms of resources. That doesn't mean that it's without challenge. You might have other problems. What are the fights that you have to fight?
To be honest, it's a lot. The challenges we face in the US is similar to everything we've heard so far. US soccer, we very quickly went from within my department, which we have the disability teams and beach and futsal as well. We went from 3 national teams to 9 national teams in a blink of an eye. So there's a capacity struggle within our department, going from 22 events a year to 48. But I will say that probably our biggest challenge is everything that's been said so far: registering players, the governance of our members, because it's fine having this top-down approach when you have national teams, but ultimately at US Soccer we want to grow the game. Our vision overall is to become the preeminent sport in the US, which is not easy. So a big part of that is going to be the disability football, disability soccer population. So we need to help register players, find players, and break down barriers. So that's a huge challenge. And we've heard in the panel so far, and I'm sure many people in the audience share.
For sure. I don't know if I don't know who's in the audience, so I'm not sure if people are aware that we're talking about a group of people that compose, according to the World Health Organization, 16% of the global population. It's the biggest minority group in the world. The European Union says that it's close to 24% because we're getting older as well. So it is a market much bigger than the Chinese market, just as a comparison. So we have an idea of scale, which brings me to the opportunity that a lot of organizations, including businesses, might be missing out by not investing in this particular target group, audience, consumer, demographic, whatever you want to call it. And so that brings me to the next point, which is, what is the opportunity here for those who are already in the space, but also for people listening, what could be an opportunity here to invest energy and in resources, of course, but energy and have the will to go into, to delve into the disabled football, inclusion and accessibility. We're talking more broadly here. I don't know who wants to tackle this.
I don't mind. I guess for me, I think the best lesson anyone can take away is collaboration and also technology. So in terms of collaboration, what's accelerated things and made it work in Scotland is reaching out to every organisation out there that helps or supports the disabled community in any way, whether it's councils, local government, national sports associations and disability, speaking to them all, but also working with the National FA to actually speak to their people on the ground, the club managers, the regional managers, coaches who are working with the disabled community every day, because you can only create opportunities and access if you actually know what's going on the ground and who's trying to play football, who wants to play football, and what the needs and demands are that maybe aren't being met. So I'd say collaboration, but also in justification of that, it's as I mentioned, the data capture, the tech. And I think I was talking to you earlier today about the Scottish FA has an app, a grassroots app, for example, that you can go in, you can select, okay, I'm a player, a coach, or a parent. I'm with the women's and girls, or I'm youth. And our next stage is you can also click, I'm with para, and then you can see which discipline of para you want to play. There is no reason why the disability community shouldn't have access to an application such as that as well. But also, you have to think about the UX of that app and whether it's going to work for someone who's visually impaired, someone who's got dyslexia, and you need to build in these concepts to the app as well. And I bet there's loads of people here at this summit who are pros in designing such things, but there's a lot of thought that has to be given, but it's collaborating with the people in the know in order that you can deliver what's needed out there.
And certainly if that grows, then you'll have an array of services and products that have to cater to. So it's also an opportunity to tap into performance, coach performance platforms that have to be accessible for.
I'm going to get inundated with tech requests now.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a world of services and products that can be sold to to properties and to coaches and to individuals. Stuart, you were going to say.
All I was going to add, if there's commercial people in the audience searching for their why, Google or you can use Yahoo, you use whatever platform you want, but you look up the purple pound, and it'll show you the amount of disposable income that the disability population has. In the UK, we did a study in the US, and of all our diverse groups, the disability population has the biggest disposable income, which is, I think, $356 million. So there's potential there from a commercial perspective of ensuring that we're capturing everyone, whether it be someone with a disability being a player, a referee, a coach, or an avid fan. At US Soccer, we recently did a launch of our new jerseys, and it was our extended national teams that actually modeled the jerseys. So we had players in power soccer players, deaf players, cerebral palsy players, wearing the street gear as well as our jerseys, selling those products. So making sure that we're inclusive, but also recognizing that this was a population that if we do want to become the preeminent sport, we need to engage with and ensure that their love and ongoing commitment to the game is there. So there's the commercial part as well.
And there's even a study by an organization in the US, Return on Disability, if I'm not mistaken, that mentions globally a disposable income of around $8 trillion worldwide. So good to get some attention on those numbers. We're coming to an end, and I would like to get back to you, Hala, and ask you, you have a very broad audience in terms of your national associations. It's very diverse. You have US, but you also might have smaller countries with less resources and different socioeconomic contexts and even geographical. If you could say, if you could leave one message, that could be spread across this very diverse and broad audience, for people to start looking into this universe and this very big part of the global population, what would it be? No pressure.
Not at all. Maybe 3 small messages. I think for us, in terms of, like you said, 211 member associations, but again, understanding that there's such a disparity amongst that. The first one is probably education and awareness. So the Disability Football Toolkit that we're developing along with the contributions from Eli Wolf, that is our contribution, but it doesn't stop there in terms of the education and awareness element is something that you need to focus on. The second is probably in terms of not underestimating the power of partnerships. It's not assuming that or expecting that you should know it all, your organization or a person within your organization should know it all. Make those partnerships and organizations and disabled people themselves, they're there to collaborate with, like Ashley said, and I think that's a really important point. You have integrated dreams and the projects, leadership programs that you deliver with member associations to empower people and different organizations that can help across the board. And I think lastly is just assumptions. It's the fear that people have of getting started. Getting started is probably the most important thing. And we face sometimes the fear of not knowing what to say or what terminology to use. Don't make assumptions, just ask the questions and try to understand and speak to people and consult with people to be able to get the ball rolling, to get things started. You'll make mistakes, but it's only through that you'll be able to start to make also impact on the longer term, and that collaboration piece is probably the most important.
Thank you. I think that's a really nice note to finish on. So don't be afraid. Just start and ask questions when you don't know. And I would like to take this moment to thank everyone on the panel and everyone here for attending. We hope we can keep this conversation going. Thank you.